welcome you to the official podcast of the Fish Wrapper publication, bringing you story content to inspire, encourage, and uplift the soul. It's our hope you find these stories refreshing, thought-provoking, and motivating as you face the challenges of everyday life. So turn us up and tune your ears, and let's get started by jumping right into the story.
A Trap for a Turkey Thief by Grace M. Sissons. Read by Michael D'Annunzio.
Here, turkey, turkey, turkey,
called Henry Bradshaw. A long line of turkeys streamed out of the woodlot and swept gracefully over the barnyard fence. Dropping down at the boy's feet, they began picking up the yellow corn strewn on the ground. Suddenly, the telephone jingled in the kitchen. As there was no one else at home, Henry went in to answer it. The message was from Mother.
Your grandfather has suddenly taken ill, so we shan't be home tonight. Be sure you lock the turkeys up tight. Mr. Wilkins lost all of his last night.
The boy hung up the receiver, and going back to the barnyard, drove the turkeys into the poultry house. They were all there, 101 big fellows, almost ready for market. And I don't intend to have them nabbed either, he said to himself as he nailed some boards across the window, which had been left open for ventilation. The Bradshaw family was striving to get the farm all paid for that fall. At the beginning of the year, Father had called a family council to plan for this effort. Each member had agreed to do something extra to help along. Henry promised to raise 100 turkeys. That will mean hatching 150, cautioned his mother. Well, if he does, he shall go to school next fall, declared Mr. Bradshaw. The diseases and misfortunes common to turkey chicks gave Henry an anxious summer. However, as he neared the marketing season with 101 lusty birds, his spirits went up, and he began to look upon schooling as a certainty. Then, all of a sudden, the neighbors began losing their poultry. Sam Bailey, the most shiftless man in the community, lost his first. After that, other people lost their flocks in quick succession. The indignant farmers organized a vigilance committee, of which Sam Bailey was the most aggressive member, and offered a $50 reward for the capture of the thief. But in spite of their efforts, no clue was discovered until one day Sam Bailey, who was always going around amongst the neighbors advising them to safeguard their poultry, brought the news that he had found a pile of turkey feathers behind the hunchback's shanty. The cripple lived a mysterious sort of life, alone down on the creek, hunting and fishing for a living, and the feather story was pretty readily believed by everybody except Mr. Bradshaw. He was as friendly as ever when the hunchback came to exchange his weekly string of fish for a loaf of Mrs. Bradshaw's bread. The boy was thinking of these things as he locked up when Sam Bailey's voice suddenly interrupted him. Fine lot of turkeys, Sonny. I reckon you'd hate to lose 'em. I reckon I would, agreed the boy emphatically. Well, you want to lock them up mighty tight. I hear your pa and ma ain't coming home tonight, so it'll be a fine chance for a thief. Let's see how you've got things fixed. Henry showed him the two entrances to the poultry house. This back door, he explained, is the one a thief would naturally want to come in at, because it can't be seen from the house. So Father made a bar to fasten it on the inside. The caller looked at the arrangement closely. No one can get in that way, he commented. And this other door we padlock on the outside. It's in plain sight from the house. Mighty exposed place to pick a lock, observed the man reflectively. You must take care to hide the key in a safe place, he cautioned. A thief can find keys with his eyes shut. Don't guess he'd find this very easy, laughed the boy as he locked the door and hid the key in a bucket of feed swinging from a peach limb. I should say not, Sam Bailey agreed admiringly. Well, I must be off. Going over to one of the neighbors to stay for the night? The boy shook his head. Oh, you might as well. Nobody's going to get those turkeys the way you've got them fastened up. Hello, looks like the hunchback coming down the road. Wondering what he's carrying. A string of fish, I reckon, to swap for Mother's bread. Don't go showing how you locked up the poultry house. The vigilance committee has its eye on that chap.
Well, it's wasting its eyesight, all right, retorted the boy. Father said he'd trust the cripple sooner than some of the vigilance chaps themselves.
He does, eh? Well, ask him if he's heard of any turkey feathers round our homes,
said Sam as he rode off. Henry snorted scornfully. He was very fond of the cripple, who had taught him many interesting bits of wood lore.
Come in,
he called as the hunchback neared the gate.
I have supper with me. I'm all alone.
It sounds mighty nice to hear someone say, "Come in," observed the newcomer as he turned at the gate.
Oh, don't you worry about that fool talk. Folks will soon forget it.
The hunchback shook his head mournfully. Not unless they catch the real thief. When the supper things were cleared away, the visitor picked up his loaf of bread and said he'd be going on.
Oh, don't go just yet, coaxed the lad. Tell me another one of your stories. You promised you would.
As the hunchback told his story, he became quite animated and began walking slowly up and down the yard. And eventually they reached the barnyard. Just as he was bringing the story to a close, they passed by the rear door of the poultry house. Suddenly, the ground shifted slightly under his feet, and he fell to the ground. Picking himself up, he looked around in a puzzled fashion.
It seems like there's something buried under here, he said.
We'll investigate this further when I come again. I've got to get on home now. It's getting late. As soon as the visitor was gone, Henry returned to the poultry house to investigate for himself. When he stamped on the ground, he heard a hollow sound. Rushing off, he got a spade and began digging, stories of mysterious underground cabins running through his brain. In a few moments, he struck something hard. Cleared off a light layer of soil, he came upon what seemed to be a trap door. Sure now that he had discovered hidden treasures, he strove wildly to pry up the heavy lid. But when he finally raised it, he found nothing more exciting than a jug-shaped cistern. He now recalled hearing one of the neighbors tell his father there was an abandoned cistern on the place. Still, something shimmered hopefully at the bottom. Poking down his fishing rod to investigate, he found some 4 feet of water. He was sitting on the poultry house step, looking down. Suddenly it flashed upon him what a fine trap this would make for a turkey thief, if he should try to get in or out by the back way. With much boyish chuckling, he set about covering the cistern over with thin boards and straw. That night, Henry slept very lightly. Every little while he would go to the window and look out toward the poultry house. All was still and peaceful, and the full moonlight made the night almost as light as day. Toward the morning, the moon set and the boy fell into a sound sleep. He was suddenly wakened by a familiar creak of the feed bucket's handle. Standing over the window, he saw a dark figure standing under the peach tree beside the bucket. A moment later, the figure unlocked the poultry house and went inside. Henry slipped cautiously downstairs and, gliding around to the poultry house window, tried to peer in between the boards. It was much too dark to see, but he made out that someone was unfastening the back door.
Whew, that fella certainly knows all about this place,
was his amazed reflection. The door opened. For an instant, a dim figure with a bulky something under his right arm stood silhouetted against the morning sky. Then it stepped down, and there was a crash of breaking boards, and the shadow disappeared. When Henry rushed round the poultry house, he found a great splashing and hollering going on down at the bottom of the cistern. Hurrying into the house, he telephoned the sheriff. Then he asked Central to give him the line call for the neighborhood. In less than 5 minutes, 20 sleepy farmers were listening to the boy's astonishing story. The sheriff and the vigilance committee, followed by half the neighborhood, arrived at about the same time. A ladder was hastily lowered into the well, and the sheriff ordered the prisoner to come on up. To everybody's amazement, the bedraggled figure that crawled rheumatically up the ladder out into the early morning light was no other than the vigilance committee's most zealous member, Sam Bailey.
What does this mean? Demanded the president sternly.
It means, neighbors, explained the dripping figure glibly, that I was in hot pursuit of that ornery turkey thief, and I fell through into this cistern. The law ought to handle a man that'll leave an unprotected cistern on his place. The sheriff shook his head. That tale's too thin, Sam. Here, boy, let's hear from you. Henry told his story briefly, going back to Sam Bailey's inspection of the poultry house the preceding evening. 2 of the turkeys are gone, he said in conclusion, so I reckon that's what he had under his arm. The sheriff got a rake and climbed down into the cistern. In a few minutes he emerged with a bulky burlap sack. Opening it, he held 2 drowned turkeys up to view. A threatening murmur rose from the crowd. The captive's swagger deserted him, and he groveled abjectly.
Henry, said the Vigilance Committee's president grimly, as the sheriff snapped on the handcuffs. You'll find that $50 reward ready for you, in the bank, this afternoon. The end.
We hope you enjoyed this story. We will have a second story for you in just a moment. We want to remind you that the Fish Wrapper is available by subscription. Each issue of the Fish Wrapper is jam-packed, full of story content, amazing recipes to delight your kitchen table, games, jokes, and much, much more. Don't miss an issue. Order yours today. Visit us at thefishwrapperonline.com or by calling 717-400-FISH. That number again is 717-400-FISH. Now let's enjoy our next story.
A Precious Moment, read by Michael D'Annunzio. I stood off to the side in a cool hospital room. The old man's surgery had been somewhat successful. At least he was not left in total blindness. After all, half sight is better than none at all. The physician at the bedside was talking about choices. Would there be care available at home, or would a nursing home be needed? The doctor left them to themselves to ponder the options. The old man bellowed, "Ma!" Then again, "Ma!" And the gray-haired woman approached the patient, who had been moved to a chair in spite of intravenous tubes and monitors. This frail little woman sat on the edge of the bed next to the old man as he said in a low, confidential tones, "Ma, what do you think? Will we be okay at home?" For a moment the 2 heads of gray hair touched together, and for that instant they were fused as one. And the woman replied in a soft, assured tone, "Oh, I think we'll be okay." It is what the man wanted to hear, for they would go home together one more time. Standing there in the room, I was an intruder in a conversation between 2 people who had labored together for nearly half a century. It was a privacy that was none of my business, and yet I saw it. Not just saw it, but captured it, and put it away in my heart, knowing that at a time forthcoming, I would need it to console my tears. Yes, Dad and Mom died this past year. Dad in August, and Mom in November. They are gone, and yet I know I could not possibly ask for more, for I know full well that if I asked for one more conversation, one more moment, one more walk through the yard, one more apple pie, that one more of everything would still not be enough. This year, I have learned to stop and look deep into the eyes of people that love me. This year, I have learned that being there when someone needs me is the most valuable gift I can give, and the one that returns itself many times over. I thought I was a giver, but this time, I was the receiver. The end.
We hope you enjoyed both stories of this episode and will join us again soon when we unravel another adventure from the pages of the Fish Wrapper. We encourage you to like and subscribe to this podcast, ensuring you never miss a new episode. See you again soon, and may our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ